Fourth, won it on her fifth. Final score, 6-3, 2-6, 7-6, 13-11 in the tiebreak. That's the story most people tell about that night. Filipina underdog. Great crowd, beautiful upset. Hold that story in your hand for a second because we're going to come back to it, because the real question isn't how she won that match. The real question is this: what actually changed on that court that night beyond the scoreline? Here's why the question matters, and why it matters more than the obvious sequel most channels are chasing right now. Everyone in Filipino tennis media, and a good chunk of global tennis media, is currently locked onto one thing: the possibility that Eala might draw Clara Tauson again at the 2026 U.S. Open. Fan pages are speculating on it. Group chats are running war rooms about it. Every second post on Filipino tennis Facebook right now is a mock-up graphic of a rematch. And I want to say this plainly because I owe it to you. As of the day I am recording this, the women's singles main draw for the 2026 U.S. Open has not been released. The draw comes out later this week. The main draw doesn't start until August 30th. Whether Eala plays Clara Tauson in the first round, or plays her in the fourth round, or doesn't play her at all, nobody knows yet. Anyone telling you otherwise is guessing. So we are not going to build this video around a matchup that hasn't been drawn. We are going to build it around something bigger. Because the will they, won't they question about a rematch is the small question. The big question is what that first match actually did to Alexandra Eala's career, because the answer, once you look at what has happened in the 12 months since, is not what the obvious story tells you. Stay with me on that. If you're already following this channel for Alex Eala coverage, the tap on the like button now genuinely helps this video reach more Filipino tennis fans. That's it for the ask. Back to the story. Quickly, so we're on the same page about who we're talking about. Alexandra Eala is 21 years old. She's from the Philippines. She trains and has trained since her early teens at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, the same academy the 14-time French Open champion built and lends his name to. She was the 2022 U.S. Open Junior Girls Singles Champion, which means the venue she is walking into this year is the same venue where she first held a trophy on the international stage. And as of the most recent WTA rankings this week, she is the world number 20 in women's singles, a career high and the highest ranking any player representing the Philippines has ever achieved on the WTA Tour. That's the resume. 5 facts. That's all you need to follow what comes next. Because it's not the resume that's interesting. It's the 12-month gap between two of those facts, between world number 70 in August 2025 and world number 20 in August 2026. That is the whole story. And on paper, it doesn't quite add up. Let me lay out 4 things that are individually true and collectively confusing. Watch what happens when you stack them. Fact 1. In August 2025, when Eala walked onto the grandstand to face Tauson, she was ranked 70th in the world. She was not seeded. She was not on anyone's shortlist to make a run. She was on the printed order of play that day, the least heralded name in her section of the draw. And yet the match report from the U.S. Open's own website, the official one, describes the atmosphere in the grandstand that night as, and I'm quoting the official recap, a boisterous, highly energized crowd, a highly partisan crowd cheering for her, for an unseeded 70th ranked player in New York in her first ever U.S. Open main draw match. So question 1, why did the grandstand sound like a home slam? Hold that, we come back to it. Fact 2. This wasn't Eala's first big scalp of 2025. In March of that year, 5 months before the Tauson match, she had made the semifinals of the Miami Open, a WTA 1000 event, the second biggest tournament category on the tour. At Miami, she was ranked 140th in the world, and she beat 3 Grand Slam champions in a row: Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, Iga Świątek. 3 major winners, 3 matches in the space of 1 week, and yet, and this is the strange part, it's the Tauson match 5 months later that people bring up first. Not the Świątek win, not the Keys win, the Tauson win. Question 2. Why did this match against a very good top 15 player land harder in her career than 3 consecutive wins over Grand Slam champions? That number matters more later. Fact 3. The way she won that Tauson match is not the way careers usually pivot. She was down 5-1 in the third set. Tauson served for the match, not once but twice, and Eala broke her both times. In the deciding tiebreak, Eala earned 4 match points and failed to convert all 4. She won it on her 5th attempt. The final tiebreak score was 13-11. If you watch the replay, there is a moment where she hits a volley on top of the net. Tauson requests a video review to see whether Eala's swing crossed to the wrong side. The review takes almost a minute, and then Tauson, waiting on the ruling, double faults on the very next point. It's one of the most emotionally chaotic finishes to a Grand Slam first-round match in recent memory. Question 3. What does a player carry forward from a match they should have lost, honestly, 4 different times? Hold that. Fact 4, 12 months later, right now this week, she is not ranked 70th. She is not ranked 140th. She is ranked number 20 in the world. In the last 12 months, she has won her first WTA singles title in Washington, D.C. on August 3rd of this year. She beat the world number 3, Jessica Pegula, in that final. And according to her official 2026 U.S. Open player profile, published earlier this month by the tournament itself, her record against top 10 opponents this year sits at 7 wins and 2 losses, 7 wins over top 10 players in 1 calendar year from a player who 12 months ago was ranked 70. Now, if the Tauson win was just a great upset, an emotional night, a beautiful crowd, and a lucky tiebreak, then question 4 is, how do you get from that to number 20 in the world with a title over the number 3 in 12 months? Upsets don't do that. Emotional nights don't do that. Great crowds don't do that. Something else happened on the grandstand that night. We're getting to it. Here is the assumption you have been making this whole time. Whether you were watching it live or watching it later or hearing about it secondhand, the story most of us walked away with was this. Alex Eala pulled off a beautiful upset. She won an emotional match. She had a moment, and then she went home to build on it. That's the story, and I'm telling you it's wrong. Not because the facts are wrong, the facts are all right there in the official recap, but because the framing is too small. The framing treats the Tauson match as a breakthrough, a single event, a door she walked through. Here is what actually happened. The Tauson match wasn't Alex Eala's breakthrough at the U.S. Open. It was the moment the tour stopped seeing her as a wildcard story and started building around her as a player. That's the flip. That's the reframe. What she won that night wasn't a match. What she won that night was a category on the WTA's map of the sport that you cannot unwin. Because think about what the tour saw on that court. They didn't see a hot week the way Miami had been a hot week. They saw a 20-year-old on a big stage in a match she should have lost by any honest reading of the third set, refuse to lose it. They saw her survive her own nerves, miss 4 match points, and still close it out. They saw her play the biggest crowd she'd ever had and get bigger the louder it got, not smaller. They saw her, in the on-court interview afterward, be the kind of person that television networks build promo reels around. The exact quote, this is verbatim from the U.S. Open's official transcript, was, "I don't have a home tournament, so to be able to have this community at the U.S. Open, I'm so grateful. They made me feel like I'm home." The tour heard that quote, the tournament schedulers heard it, the sponsors heard it, and from that night forward, Alexandra Eala stopped being scheduled as a curiosity and started being scheduled as an attraction. That is a real verifiable shift, and it is exactly what has played out over the 12 months since. The grandstand didn't give her a win. The grandstand gave her a role. That is the reframe. Now let me prove it. Proof number 1 is the number, and the number is boring on purpose because sometimes boring numbers tell the truth. In August 2025, going into the U.S. Open, Alex Eala was ranked 70th in the world. This week, in August 2026, she is ranked 20th. That is a climb of 50 ranking spots in 52 weeks. That kind of climb is not the shape of a player who had one hot night. It is the shape of a player who was recategorized. Look at where the wins came from. A 4th round at the Miami Open in 2026, a semi-final at the Berlin Open in June, a round of 16 at Dubai, a first WT, a singles title in Washington, D.C. on August 3rd of this year. And per the U.S. Open's own player profile page updated earlier this month, roughly 7 wins against top 10 opponents in 2026 alone. That's not a hot streak. That's a floor. Post Tauson, the level she plays at against top opposition has stopped being surprising even to her. Proof number 2 is not a number. It's the sentence she said on the grandstand court in the on-court interview right after the match, and it's worth listening to word by word. I don't have a home tournament, so to be able to have this community at the U.S. Open, I'm so grateful. They made me feel like I'm home. That sentence is doing something specific. Before that night, home crowd was a concept that belonged to other players. Coco Gauff had one in New York. Carlos Alcaraz had one in Madrid. Naomi Osaka had one in Tokyo. Filipino tennis had produced great juniors, great doubles players, great regional champions, but it had never produced a player who could walk onto a Grand Slam show court and hear her own name shouted back at her from 4 sides. On the grandstand that night, in front of thousands of Filipinos who had traveled from across the tri-state area and beyond, that concept transferred from other players to her. And a player who has a home crowd at a Grand Slam is not the same asset to the tour as a player who does not. That is a durable identity shift, and it shows up in serve percentages, in confidence, in schedule assignments, and in what the tournament markets around her for years. Let me sit with that for a second because it's easy to breeze past. What was built on the grandstand that night wasn't a highlight reel. It was a relationship between her and a country that had been waiting a very long time to have someone to stand behind at a slam. Once that relationship exists, it doesn't dissolve if she loses a first round somewhere. It travels with her. Which brings us to proof number 3. And proof number 3 is the moment where the reframe becomes undeniable. Sunday, August 3rd, 2026, Washington, D.C. The final of the Mubadala City D.C. Open, a WTA 500 level event. Across the net from Alexandra Eala is Jessica Pegula, the world number 3, not a rising player, not a struggling former top tenor. The active world number 3 ranked exactly where she was ranked when she reached the U.S. Open final the previous year. Eala loses the first set 4-6. She wins the second 6-4, and in the third set, the deciding set of her first ever WTA final against the third-ranked player on earth, she wins 6-0. 6-love. A bagel in the deciding set of a final against the world number 3. You do not do that as an upset artist. You do that as a closer. And the shot pattern in that DC final, if you go back and watch it, the aggressive forehand redirected on the run, the willingness to hit through, the line on break point, the refusal to shrink when the score gets close, that is the same shot pattern she pulled out of nowhere in the tiebreak against Tauson 11 months earlier. What the grandstand did wasn't teach her those shots. She already had them. What the grandstand did was teach her that she was allowed to use them on the biggest points. That's the gear that used to belong only to top 10 players. And on August 3rd of this year in Washington, D.C., she used it to win a final 6-love in the third against one of them. That is not the trajectory of a player who had an upset. That is the trajectory of a player who was rebuilt. Now, I owe you the honest limits because a good reframe is only as good as what it refuses to overstate. Here is what this reframe does not prove. It does not prove Alex Eala is a Grand Slam contender yet. She has not, at the time of this recording, won a Grand Slam match past the second round. She has been to a Wimbledon first round, a U.S. Open second round, and slam appearances at the Australian Open and French Open where she has not gone deep. Being recategorized by the tour is not the same as being a champion. It is a floor, not a ceiling, and her 2026 has had genuinely bad weeks. She lost in the fourth round of the 2026 Miami Open 6-love, 6-2 to Karolina Muchova, one of the worst score lines of her season. She lost twice to Linda Noskova in 2026, both in lopsided fashion, once 6-2, 6-0 at Indian Wells, and once 6-2, 6-4 in the Berlin semifinals. She lost in the round of 32 at the Cincinnati Open just last week to Elena Gabriela Rus. These are not small blemishes, they are real signals that on the wrong day, against the wrong style, the world number 20 is still finding her range against the top of the sport. And here is the genuine uncertainty. The 2026 U.S. Open Women's Singles Draw has not been released as I am recording this. It comes out this week. Whether Eala draws Clara Tauson in the first round, whether they meet at all this year, is unknown. If they do meet, it will not be at the grandstand again by default, and it will not be the same match again by default because both players are in different places than they were a year ago. And if they don't meet, the story of what the first match did to her career is unchanged. This video is not built on the rematch. It's built on what has already happened. So here is where we land. A year ago, Eala walked onto the grandstand 5-1 down in the third set of a match she had, by every honest reading, already lost. She walked off with something you cannot unwin. Not a highlight, not a viral clip, but a category. And this year, 12 months later, she is walking into the same tennis center in Flushing Meadows as the world number 20, as a WTA singles champion, as one of a very small handful of players in the draw with a positive record against the top 10 this season. The 5-1 was a scoreline. What she built on top of it is a career. Look at the room she is in now. That crowd on the grandstand, the boisterous, highly partisan crowd from a year ago, is not showing up in 2026 to see whether a Filipina can shock a seed. They are showing up to watch a top